Was there some questions in the chat that flew by? I think.
I have a question. How do you best suggest for selecting things? I know that you suggested Playground, but when you have stuff like CSS modules where you start to get hashes, things get a little dicey, right?
Yeah, and that's a good point. So at our job, we use a lot of shared components that we're pulling in, like our own internal design library. So I can't even use this at my job. So, but what I do, or one of the things that I do, if you do Command Shift C and just hover over it, is so the first thing I'm looking for is under accessibility. Is there a role? And if there is, then yeah, you could go ahead and use that role. And then what Ben showed me, I guess this is kind of the same thing, but if you come over here to accessibility, because again, we're wanting to find a role first, it will be here, so it will help us out. In terms of if selecting by IDs and classes, I think I want to throw that to the audience if anybody has thoughts on that. It's something I've seen in projects. I try to stay away from, but I've seen a few scenarios where, yeah, still just went ahead and selected from CSS. So yeah, I'll throw that one to the crowd if anybody has strong opinions on that.
I think what somebody said, I think maybe Patrick earlier, was saying that Enzyme kind of lost this battle because they didn't test the app the way a user would, right? So if you keep that kind of paradigm in your mind, like we're trying to judge against the way a user would use this, they're not going to look for a test ID, right? They're going to probably click a button or interact with a dialogue or some other role. So yeah, like I think like Joe's saying, I try to aim at roles first and then try to get to the least specific all the way down to the most specific if I have to. Like we do have test IDs where I work on some elements because it may be the only way we can figure out how to target it. But in my opinion, that's a little breakable possibly. It also makes the DOM heavier, you know. Other thoughts?
Can I ask a question? So just for my curiosity, is it easy to set up if we want to try a test about like state change, or like the component to test if a component like pops up when you click a button? I just want to know, like, is it easier to write it in Jest or the tools you introduced in this workshop?
Yeah, so what I've been doing so far, and I'll throw this to the audience as well, is basically mocking out props or state. And it still gets iffy because I know the focus is not supposed to be on implementation, but there are some things that are only going to show up if the state is this versus that. For example, if the type is, say, an email, then on the next page, I wanted to say email address instead of phone number, something like that. So I have done this with React Testing Library, just create an object of my props and my state, and it could be set up that way, which, yeah.
A couple of questions. One is there something that's just like, what is this called with React Testing Library, this little library that you can use to select things, to find the selection terms? Is there something like that for Jest? Because I use that Jest a lot, and it seems like it would be pretty handy.
Let's see, let me go back to the docs. Because not a tool like Test and Playground that I know of. Are you referring to like all of these methods? Or
yeah, just sort of like, like you said, you took it out of the GUI. It was almost like going into developer tools. You select something and it just comes up with the select statement. Something that sounds like Rabbit.
Not one that I know of. I would
okay. Also, quickly, do you happen to, you sort of started this whole thing off talking about like test-driven development and how people are kind of like, this is really counterintuitive. Has it become more and more intuitive now that you've spent like those nights, say up till 3 a.m. figuring out how to do this? Yeah, like you got to learn the library, but do you think like this now? Like, do you actually get your assignments and then code the tests up and then make them go green, or do you still build the feature? Because that seems like from my perspective, you still sort of have to figure out what the feature looks like by kind of building it, then going back and testing it. So I'm just curious if it's gotten any easier for you.
Yeah, so at first the change was, this is not going to happen to me again. I'm just doing this because I'm protecting myself. And from going through that, it has changed the way that I think about it. And one thing that I've learned is that once I just get in there and start writing tests, even if the tests aren't complete, but I'm putting the ideas, I've noticed so much more at the beginning of a process by doing that. So every single time I'm not writing a test right before the code, but if I write the code, then I come over here to make sure I write the test. Because again, I don't want that waiting. But yeah, that has changed how I thought about it. And when I was listening to a podcast, it was a concept introduced that was soap opera testing. And I found that really interesting. And that's all about taking it to the next level. Not only are you writing these tests, but you have different characters. You have Hack the Hanker or Hank the Hacker. He's going to come into your app and he's trying something fraudulent, you know? So just thinking like that as well, and thinking of specific people going through it, that's also helped my test scenarios as I'm writing them, and helped me catch more things I wouldn't have otherwise.
So not just the happy path.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because we found a lot of edge cases, like, and there are some things I'm like, how did we miss that, or how? But it's an edge case, you know. It wasn't obvious. So the more that you can start writing these tests and thinking these things, thinking about them ahead of time, you know, it's just going to help so much.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything to say about snapshot testing?
Ooh, I actually had a slide about it and I deleted it because I didn't want to talk about it, but I will. So yeah, when I got on these teams, or the first few projects that I worked on, it was like all snapshot testing. And it just became autopilot, updating the snapshots. So I always felt like there's value in snapshots because you can see, for example, we get content, specific content from business that has to be written this way. So if somebody changes that, I would want to know. But the problem is we all just update them automatically pretty much. And from everybody I've talked to and articles I've read, that seems to be pretty much what everyone falls into. So I don't know that snapshot is an issue itself, or if it's so easy for that to become an afterthought. So we've moved away from snapshots. And, you know, we're checking things in the DOM with React Testing Library. So yeah, that's something I've moved away from. But anybody else, I would be interested to hear your thoughts on snapshot testing.
There's something about it in the chat, Joe.
Oh yeah, great for projects where the DOM isn't represented by functions like vanilla JS DOM manipulation.
Yeah, I've been using it for a particular project I'm working on at work where we're not using React. We're actually just using plain old vanilla JavaScript. And I've actually found that using snapshot testing has been really nice for that, just because I'm not really representing the DOM in an easy way to get to. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. It's just like, I know that I've got some DOM here. Let's just test to make sure that the DOM is reacting correctly whenever I call this function. So I've actually found it fairly useful in that respect.
Oh, well, there you go.
I was told that the good rule of thumb is that if you have a pure function that spits out HTML that's supposed to be consistent, that's when you would use it.
Gotcha. Yep. What else? Oh, let me go ahead while you guys are thinking, post all of those links in the Slack channel.
Thought I saw a question earlier. Adrian called somebody named Mike illustrious. That must not be me.
Wait, no, you called Joe that. He said at the
Oh.
very beginning in his intro, yeah. And then I thought that it was illustrious when he was going to peace out before the questions.
Oh yeah.
I'll try.
Jared likes I have friends that are physical therapists that love CrossFit. It's like paying for their kids' college. There's something else. I saw somebody ask a really good question. That hasn't been answered.
Inter-browser compatibility.
That might have been it.
What was the question?
When you've got to pass tests in Chrome and IE and stuff like that, how does that relate to unit testing?
So I hadn't run into an issue with that. I did with Cypress, and we were actually going to use Cypress, but they don't support IE for end-to-end testing. So we wound up using WebDriver. But I hadn't run into issues with that yet. Anybody else?
I can speak to that a little bit. It's going to depend if this is like a personal project or, you know, if you work somewhere. It depends on the browser governance that, you know, that company has, right? Because not all the places are supporting all the browsers. And beyond that, there could just be a different standard of testing in your area. So some places would say it is good enough that you do unit testing in Chrome and you're doing manual testing, you're spot checking your work other places. That is an opinion. And it's kind of hard to say if that's best or not. It sounds to me like there'd be a gap there, but there just could be a situation where you aren't fully covered. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. I guess testing really is a science, but it's very much an art. And you'll have to find the level of confidence that you want. But then again, if you're employed somewhere, you'll be held to that standard. Plus, there can be like your team's standard. So even among like a big company, teams have different ideas about what is good enough, what is MVP.
I think we need to get Adrian on the docket for a testing talk, it sounds like.
I've been trying. I'm
I
trying.
think that would be fun, yeah.
There's a lot to learn. I think where I work, we on the web application, the main web app, we have Cypress running some automated tests that are, you know, our company says these are the tests that it's really the customer experience and like the people that deal with the customers say these are the things we have to test. How much of this can be automated? Some of it can't be. And they have to manually test a few things each week because we're pretty small. We don't have like a whole QA team, but we do have a gap. We don't have like we support IE11, but we don't test on that. You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't happen. We test on it when somebody says, "Hey, IE11 broke," and we're like, "Oh, we forgot about that one." But I work on the React Native ad now, so that's on those other guys. Mostly kidding.
Joe, would it be terrible scope creep to just like talk about the M word, the other type of testing? Can we bring up mutation testing for like 1 minute? Well,
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So this could be its own dedicated talk. I just want to put it in your minds that the world of testing truly is big. So there's a way to test the quality of your test, and that's called mutation testing. And if you're bored, you know, Wikipedia.
You need to type in M word equals mutation testing.
I think in software development that can be really helpful to feel confident in your code. That's all, just a word, mutation testing.
Is this like chaos testing, like the same thing Netflix does?
Oh, no, I think that's kind of different. So I'm not as familiar with their chaos testing. I think that's more site reliability engineering, and they're trying to bring it down or see how resilient it is. It could be its own talk, but in a few sentences, mutation testing, it introduces mutants into your code, which are kind of like specific operators already written. So like a rule set. And an example would be, instead of 1 + 1, it would replace your plus sign with a minus sign. And all it's going to check is, did your unit test catch that? if you've done a really good job, you know, writing out your unit tests, maybe you use TDD, maybe you wrote them later, you should have one or more failing unit tests because you've changed your code. Like it's behaving different functionally. If all your tests are still passing, that's bad. That means, you know, you missed something. And the point of mutation testing is to find gaps in your unit testing. So you can have 100% unit test coverage, and you can still have really low mutation coverage, like 40% or something. If you have 100 and 100, you can feel like, wow, I'm infallible. Not quite, but yeah, that's the point of it. It's another tool.
Awesome. That's cool. Someone, oh, Stephanie worked with a chaos tester by his own nature. When I went to the AWS conf a couple of years ago, and Netflix gave a talk and blew my mind. I cannot believe the stuff they were doing. This is in 2018, I think. And they were like on the edge of all their AWS infrastructure. They're throwing in purposely breaking things constantly to try to take down different Netflix servers to see what happens, see how quickly it comes back up. Like, you know, it's just pretty smart. Yeah. I think Netflix started it. Yeah. I don't know, more than 50% positive that's true. It's Chaos Monkey is the engine they use to run it. Yeah, I think that if nobody else has any other questions, then we'll wrap it up for Joe. Your last chance to ask him about all his testing knowledge. Cool. Yeah, Joe, thanks a lot, man. It's always a pleasure. I've known Joe a long time. Our combined love of Snarky Puppy brought us together at a coffee meetup one time. Yeah, so we have like I was talking about at the beginning of the event, we have a need for more speakers all the time, and it's not I mean, me or Joe will always get up here and talk or whatever about whatever we're dealing with or learning or experiencing, but it'd be great to hear from the rest of the community too. So if anybody knows some people that wanted to speak, hook us up and talk to us. This coming month, next month, we have Justin Noel on the docket. I think he's talking about some React stuff with Cloudflare. I need to research it a little bit more. It sounded pretty interesting. And then, like I said earlier, in April, we have Tim Waite, who's going to jump in from the Vue meetup and give us a little of React and Vue and kind of React versus Vue. And Jared's asking about recordings. We do have someone that's working on recordings for us right now. We're trying out a couple of things. So we have like almost a year long of backlog of videos to go through. Anyway, we're working on some stuff. That costs money, so you could support us, any of us, by throwing a couple of dollars at the Open Collective, which is linked in all the meetups events on the meetup.com page too. That'd be good. Some of the stuff that we do is not free, although none of us get paid. When I get done, I'm going to go eat tacos, so we're about to wrap it up here in a second. Good to see all of y'all again, and we'll stay on the chat for a couple minutes, but I think we're done. See you soon. Thanks, y'all.